Good morning, everybody. My name is Mike Patton. I am Park Development Manager for the City of Sioux Falls. Today we are here to discuss the Falls Park Master Plan, a project that began over 3 years ago, and I'm extremely excited to say we're nearing the final stages towards completion. The Falls Park Master Plan is a grand vision. It's meant to help guide the next 30 to 50 years of development for the park, as well as the surrounding area. The ideas illustrated in the plan are the result of extensive community input, stakeholder conversations, expert analysis, and a deep commitment to balancing and preserving the park's natural beauty while scaling the user experience with the growth of our community. The master plan represents transformational change that will take decades to realize. We want to create a world-class signature park that attracts visitors from afar and remains that local beloved destination. A little history here. It's been over 30 years since the last comprehensive master planning for Falls Park took place. The master plan of record was established in 1992, and construction of the park started shortly afterwards in multiple phases, including the extension of Phillips Avenue, which made a direct connection between Falls Park and downtown. Since then, our community has more than doubled in size. Property of the park has exceeded all expectations. And as our community continues to grow, it's fitting that we establish the new vision for the future of the park and capitalize on the great momentum of all the development in our downtown. That's also the reason Allie Hartzler, our Communications and Culture Officer, is here today. She's going to share a new branding for the area that's seeing this incredible public and private investment. And we're addressing the needs of today, as well as looking ahead to the future with this master plan and brand unveiling. In 2021, Parks and Recreation launched a design competition with a goal to generate big ideas and help select the best team to take us forward with the master planning efforts. It was the first time our department did anything like this, and we saw an incredible amount of creativity and ideas come out of the process. The team at Confluence ultimately won the competition and was awarded the design contract. Now, the ideas that came out of the design competition were publicly shared and utilized during the design process, but they weren't the final plan. They were simply the beginning. I'll often say that community engagement and stakeholder feedback is the cornerstone for public space design. And during this design process, we went with multiple stakeholders, nearby landowners, including business owners, police officers, historians, artists, and our management partners like Farmers Market, Stockyards Ag Experience, as well as the variety of different city department staff involved in the process. The master plan that we will fully unveil tomorrow considers extensive community input from public meetings, conversations with park users, interviews with stakeholders, workshops, and an online survey that had over 12,000 visitors and comments from 4,000 unique users. This community-involved planning process is a standard, not just for park development, but also other long-range planning efforts like the comprehensive Shape Sioux Falls Plan or the Downtown 2035 Comprehensive Plan, which is currently being worked on. The recommendations in this plan are a collaborative effort of shared ideas and proactive design that will serve our community for years to come. The Falls Park Master Plan is a grand vision. Big ideas that are rooted in community values. And the intent is not to make all these improvements at once. This is not a single phase effort, but rather a long-term goal that will steer the future growth for the park towards this community-approved vision. Once adopted by our City Council and our Parks and Recreation Board, we will have the opportunity to bring forward projects through our city's 5-year capital improvement plan in multiple phases to help support future growth of the park. It will likely take decades to implement and public-private partnerships to accomplish, but by establishing this vision, we are setting the stage for what is possible. We greatly appreciate all the time and effort put forth by the design team and are extremely excited to share the entirety of the vision with you at our public open house this week. With that, I invite John Jacobson from Confluence to come to the podium and share some previews of the master plan and a glimpse into what to expect at the open house tomorrow. John?
Thank you, Mike. As Mike mentioned, my name is John Jacobson. I'm a principal with Confluence. We are the primary consultant for the city of Sioux Falls. We are a landscape architecture and planning firm based here within our community, but throughout the middle part of the country as well. As Mike mentioned, we've been working on this for the last 3 years. Ultimately, this vision is a very grand one and is going to take a number of years to fully implement. It's not going to be done just in one shot. And it's going to involve a lot of important community partners for its establishment of the vision as well. Ultimately, the park carries a lot of the history of our community, right? Both good and bad, industrial and development. It's a complex park that has a lot of different pieces and parts involved with it. It's a neighborhood park. It's a destination park for the city, but it's also a regional park. The park experiences over 1 million visitors per year. And because of the initial master plan that Mike discussed with you and its success through the 90s and 2000s, there's more and more use of the park. So as we plan for the future, we need to be able to take that use and implement it over time. So there's a lot of feet going throughout the park. Throughout our stakeholder meetings and our public feedback that we worked on, one of the resounding themes that we heard throughout that process is to preserve the heart of the park in the core and kind of leave that green space there. Don't overdevelop it. And I think when you come to the open house tomorrow evening, you'll be able to see we're actually doing some things to change the center of the park, remove some vehicles from the interior to be able to take that green and take that nature and make it even a grander experience. So stay tuned for that. But around the periphery, we're also going to have to be able to accommodate for that growth and the impact of the people using the park and the experience that we have. Ultimately, our vision is all about making sure whether you're 5 years old, 50 years old, or 75 years old, and you come to Falls Park, there's an activity for you to do there at any one time on any day of the given year. So making sure that we've got that variety of recreation activities is important. Ultimately, going through all of our public feedback and talking to our stakeholders, we identified a number of important takeaways from our community engagement, and you'll see those on the screen. The first one is preserving and enhancing the heart of the park. Kind of talked about that already with the central core, kind of that heart, so everything emanates out from there. Improve circulation and safety. Obviously, this is a downtown park. It's surrounded on all sides by our community. So the way people get there is very important, both whether it's on foot, via bike, or via automobile. We have to be able to accommodate all of those needs. Expanding the recreational opportunities, we kind of touched on that. When we get into the plan in more detail tomorrow, you'll see that there's a variety of things there depending upon what you would like to do, from really active recreation to very passive recreation. Embracing that full season programming. I think, today being the first day of snow, we can all appreciate the fact that, we still want to get outside for 4 or 5 months of the year. And how does our plan impact winter usage? We want to seek out partnership and opportunities like the Farmers Market, Stockyards Ag, and the Jacobson Plaza development. But we also want to improve water quality. The Big Sioux River is a federally listed impaired river. We want to make sure that the improvements that we do to the park enhance water quality as opposed to negatively affect it. And there's things that we will implement in its future development to be able to accommodate and do that. But clearly, it's going to take more than just Falls Park because there's a lot of things that affect that river corridor. Obviously, I mentioned the historic base of the park. We want to preserve that history. We don't want to change it, but we also want to be able to modernize it as well so that the experience kind of matches how modern folks like to go see things. So one of the important parts of some of the water quality things that you see at the park now, as part of the greenway improvements that are currently happening. There's a new Lowhead Dam being constructed across the upper portion of the falls. If you go to phase 3, which just opened up and finished, that dam's being rebuilt. It's replacing a historic structure there. That structure is important to maintain water levels throughout downtown and to keep that consistent river there. So being able to explain what that structure is doing to the public when they visit the park is a perfect example of how we want to take some of that past history and kind of interpret it and show people that it's still doing important things. Ultimately, we want to also, because of the urban pressure that exists on the park, we want to be able to expand the overall extent of the park. And by doing that, one of the things that we're looking at is, there's an old quarry on the east side of Weber Avenue that we want to incorporate into the park and be able to have some modern activities, some of that recreation that I was talking about occur there. Things like an urban fishery, an adventure course, those types of things. So ultimately, we want to be able to walk to the park, drive to the park, experience it, get that kind of heart of nature, but also be able to ultimately take all the needs of its particular users, right? From a neighborhood park to a destination park to a regional park. I mentioned a lot of the visitors that come into the park. It's not uncommon for me to drive that way into work, to drive through the park, and inevitably throughout the springtime, summer, and fall, I'm following a car that's from out of state, right? So we want to make that experience of someone who's coming in of our community, kind of give them a glimpse of what Sioux Falls is all about, right? If this is the only spot where they stop. So it's more than just seeing the falls. It's also kind of promoting our community and being able to, for visitors to learn why we're here and how our community has developed over the last 100 years. This master plan has got a lot of complex elements into it. As Mike mentioned, it's going to take a number of phases and a lot of different efforts to be able to get it to be implemented. It could take 30 plus years to fulfill some of the things that we're proposing within this plan. So it is a long-term plan. Ultimately, today, we're just kind of scratching the surface of all this stuff. We invite you in the public to come to our open house tomorrow night, be able to see the plans in a little bit more detail. We're very excited about the transformation of this ultimate vision. To me, it's a perfect kind of story about our community and how it's developed over the time. This is just the next step, and it kind of helps us show that we're a vibrant, growing community and kind of we're able to show our values on full display for people who come into the park. With that, I'd like to introduce Allie Hartzell, who is the City Communications and Culture Head.
Thanks, John. Good morning. Allie Hartzler, Communications and Culture Officer. You already heard some pretty big and exciting ideas this morning and of what's to come with the details tomorrow, and I'm excited to keep that ball rolling. Falls Park is the namesake of our city, and as it has changed over time, Falls Park has too. While you'll get to see the full master plan tomorrow, I think this marks a particularly exciting next chapter for Falls Park. I want to share a quick story to help kind of set the context and the stage for this work. A few weeks ago, I was walking down Phillips Avenue right by the Levitt, and I was stopped by a person. She actually was a flight attendant. She had a few hours to spend in our city in between flights, and she said, "Can you tell me where the falls is?" She was right there. She was so close, and yet she really didn't know how to get there or where she was. Recent developments in that north side of our downtown have filled that whole area between the Levitt and Falls Park with all kinds of gems that we want people to stop and see while they're here and on their way to the falls. This includes the beautiful expansion of the River Greenway and, of course, all the awesome amenities that are coming to Jacobson Plaza and Lloyd Landing. And that's just where we're at right now. As we plan the details of the work currently underway and plan for the transformation that will come with the master plan in the years ahead, we want to make sure that residents can easily find and discover all the awesome things our downtown parks have to offer. And that's why I'm excited today to announce a new identity for this area, the Falls. Simultaneously, we have been working on this transformational vision for Falls Park. That's a roadmap for the next several decades. We wanted to ensure, as we're thinking about Jacobson Plaza of today and all the surrounding area, that this complements the master plan for years to come. In the Falls Park master plan, you'll see tomorrow better connects visitors to Falls Park, Phillips Avenue, and the Big Sioux River. So we're excited to announce the Falls, which visually connects these spaces. This logo embodies the heart of our city, our waterfalls, which attracts more than 1 million visitors annually. Whether you're enjoying a concert outdoors at the Levitt in the summer, attending a yoga class at Lloyd Landing along the river, or enjoying skating at Jacobson Plaza with your family, the Falls is a system of parks designed to create connection with one another and with the world around us. Using this visual identity, we'll be adding wayfinding signage from the Levitt to Falls Park to encourage people to visit and move throughout these connected paths and connected parks. You may have noticed this new signage going up in and around Falls Park to reflect this. We started installing the signs on Monday and plan to be finished by the end of this week. We'll also be launching a new website next year to highlight the programming and wayfinding across the system of parks. In the meantime, you can stay up to date on all that's happening at the Falls on siouxfalls.gov/explorethefalls. Residents and visitors will also be able to engage with us on Facebook and Instagram to find out the latest at Explore the Falls. The Falls look and feel celebrates the anchor of our city while making it easy for residents and visitors to easily discover all our downtown parks have to offer. We love it, and we hope you do too. I want to invite Mike back up to the podium to close us out. Thank you.
Thank you, Allie. A few closing remarks before we open it up to questions. In addition to unveiling the master plan, we're excited to showcase the Falls this week as we get ready for our beloved community holiday tradition, Winter Wonderland. Winter Wonderland kicks off this Friday at 5 o'clock with fireworks going off at 6 o'clock. On the opening night, lights will be turned on at 5 o'clock to midnight this Friday through January 5th. Opening night of Winter Wonderland and fireworks is a super popular event, so we know everybody will be excited, and we encourage everyone to plan accordingly, expect traffic delays, and of course be kind and patient. We will also talk a little bit about how we plan to further build upon this tradition of Winter Wonderland with the Falls Park Master Plan, so please be sure and join us at 5 o'clock tomorrow at Startup Sioux Falls. Next steps in the process for the master plan after this open house, we'll be presenting the final version to City Council and the Parks and Recreation Board for final approval and adoption, which will happen later in 2025. So with that, I will say thank you and open up the floor to questions.
So back to the rebranding, is Falls Park no more? Is it called the Falls, or is that the entire area? Or could you explain that more?
I will ask Allie to come up and address the new brand.
Great question. Falls Park is still Falls Park. The Falls is meant to encompass the system of parks in the area. We know anecdotally that's what people call it already, so it's just officially putting that stamp on it and creating some visual connection through those spaces.
Allie, could you share a few more specifics on what went into this design? How much did the city spend on this rebrand, and who was the company that did the actual design and marketing for this?
Yes, absolutely. So we actually did this design in-house, and we have just an incredibly awesome, talented team of designers and strategists on our team, some of which are in the room today. So very proud that we were able to do this work ourselves. In terms of cost, there is about $30,000 for the signs themselves and then the cost of the actual website. The process that we used was really having conversations with parks and with some of our partners like DTSF and Experience Sioux Falls to really understand the history and the symbolism behind parks and try to create a visual that celebrates the past but also protects us into the future.
Is the website included in that 30,000
Yes.
number? Okay, great. Just clear.
Just to follow up on that, you said the falls for the parks in the district. Can you explain the boundaries a little bit?
Yes, the easiest way to understand it is actually a map that we have available on the website. It's siouxfalls.gov/explore the falls, but really it goes from the Levitt to Falls Park, and in between there, we have these new amenities such as Lloyd Landing, the River Greenway, and Jacobson Plaza.
So as this master plan develops, the falls will develop with it in terms of the territory?
Exactly.
Yeah, I have questions related to the master plan development.
As a bit of a follow-up to your question too, so on Jacobson Plaza, as an example, you'll see the Falls logo that Ally showed incorporated into the signage, right? So that branding is consistent through all that park development.
Can you give us an idea of the cost of the master plan? I mean, what are some of these projects, or what's the total cost as it is?
Sure. So when we are planning at this kind of level, right, it's difficult to get into a deep amount of detail, right? We're just kind of doing that overview, large overview. So when we're pricing out the different elements that we're proposing to be in a plan like this, we typically put it in a high, medium, low type category, right? And so right now, that vision overall for all the different elements in the park is anywhere from 90 million on the low side to over 130 on the high side. So its average is in the 115, 120 area in total. So, but there's a lot of different pieces and parts that go into that. There's opportunities for partnerships there, different grants, those kind of things. We're just identifying, as part of the numbers I gave you, just the elements within the park itself.
I think you mentioned over 1 million people visit the park a year. I was wondering where that number is from, and are there any growth projections you want to meet in the future?
Sure. So if you go to Experience Sioux Falls, they track visitorship within the park, and there's a number of different ways that we look at that as well based on cell phone usage. But that's a typical number that's been an average over the last 5+ years or so that Experience Sioux Falls has tracked. So, so there is a visitor center within the park as well for our community there. So we would expect that as these improvements and the community's growth continue to happen, that there's just going to be more and more pressure on the park. And so we need to be able to have the elements within it to withstand that people pressure, right? Hence some of the vehicle circulation improvements we're talking about, parking improvements, trail improvements, pathway improvements, that kind of stuff. Yes.
Can you provide a little bit of context for, what has gone into the master plan up to this point, and then what the next steps are? Or is this like the plan is done, it's time for the people to vote on paying for things, or, where do we go from here? How did we kind of just contextualize this a little bit for me?
Sure. No, thanks. That's a good question. Ultimately, our overall plan can be developed in a series of phases, right? The important program elements can be broke out in pieces and parts depending upon the community's priority. And as an example of that, I'll use the River Greenway. The city of downtown River Greenway, the city of Sioux Falls did a master plan for its entire development from Falls Park to Cliff Avenue. And as needs of it happened, they've been able to break out phases and get it done just like phase 3. So this park is developed in the similar kind of way that there's multiple phases potentially within it. And as different priorities and needs come up, they can be addressed. Yeah. Yeah. Oh no, thank you. So we've had a whole series between our stakeholder meetings and our other public open houses. We've vetted various ideas over the last 3 years and kind of made the sausage, if you will, and what we're presenting tomorrow night is the final culmination of all those discussions. So we would see pending park board final authorization and council authorization, this would be close to the final vision.
So I'm going to ask that a little different way. We've got Jacobson in the works. Looks like that's moving forward.
Yep.
What would be the next step after Jacobson?
So right now, based on our stakeholder meetings and kind of the opinion that we've taken from all the various input, we would propose focusing on the farmers market area. Between the existing infrastructure that's there and the congestion that happens on weekends, we feel like there's a number of improvements that can be done to alleviate a lot of that and make the farmers market experience better. And then beyond that, it starts to stagger out to some other improvements that really help the visitors that come to the park.
Do you have more? Okay.
Hi, what efforts are being made or plans in place involving other opportunities in this kind of newly developed Falls Park to view the falls themselves, different overlooks, I'll start with that.
Yeah, so the plan incorporates a number of things to do that. As an example, one of the elements within it is replacement of the existing bridge that goes over the falls right now. You know that if you've been out there anytime recently, it's very narrow. It's quite congested during peak times. You can't even stop along it, right, to really take a picture or do a selfie or just look at the falls or whatever you're doing. So one of the more pragmatic elements of our plan is to replace that bridge, to be able to put viewing opportunity way, do what you want to do, and people can keep moving through the park. Beyond that, in some of the developed visitor areas, we have some proposed visitor or some building improvements that would also enhance that viewership throughout the season from different heights. And, ultimately all buildings within the park have a certain lifespan. So we've also looked at once those lifespans are, once those facilities are at the age they need to be replaced, what's the best way to accommodate some of this future growth in their replacement.
Did you look into any other cities that maybe have a river or waterfalls in their downtown area to get ideas for
Sure.
what you're doing?
Yes, I mean, our idea, ultimately what we want to do is have Falls Park be a signature park. And by signature park, I mean it's one that you think of along the same lines as Bryant Park or Golden Gate Park throughout the country, right? It's one of those main stops. And if you research a lot about Falls Park right now, oftentimes it does fall into top 10, top 20 visitor places for parks throughout the country. So we already have a certain reputation that we want to be able to enhance. So taking that within our purview, we want to make sure that we give anyone who comes into the park those different sorts of recreation opportunities and chances to see the falls. So,
Any other questions?
Thank you. So you talked about water quality. There's so much impervious surface near the Big Sioux, especially in downtown. Feels like you're going to add to that. How do you offset water quality with adding more things?
yep, you bet. And, clearly what we're proposing within the park is not necessarily going to lessen the amount of pavement, right, based on the needs of the people coming into the park and kind of the impact of having more and more people come in there. So we want to make sure that we implement it in smart ways. So City Ready, as an example, has a policy of trying to incorporate buffer strips along the area. So there's a number of areas within Falls Park that are currently mowed that we want to look at changing that to a low mow or even a non-mow areas as far as the buffer strips go. So any runoff that's coming off the park has to matriculate through those buffer strips first, and hopefully a lot of the sediments and other contaminants that are in that runoff get caught in the buffer strip before they go into the river. That's one example. Another example would be with our roadway and parking improvements that we want to do that currently that runoff goes directly into the river, right, through a series of storm sewer. So as part of our plan, that runoff gets captured in sediment bases. So again, those things can be removed before ultimately it goes into the river. There are other things of porous type pavements that we'll look at as well, but those will be kind of operations and budget type decisions once each phase is identified within the product. So there's a number of kind of arrows in our quiver that we can use to help reduce that runoff, and that would include even things like green roofs, right? Anybody who might be familiar with the River Greenway Phase 2, the one in front of the Hilton there, there's the water feature plaza. If you actually go look at that pump house that runs that water feature, it's actually got a green roof on it. So all that water that hits that roof is most of the time is sucked up by those plants and doesn't even make it to the pavement.
All right, thanks for coming, guys.
Thank you.